Hello, my name is Emra. I am a 39-year-old person who has 2 daughters and values his wife. I was having financial difficulties from time to time, but I was a happy man. Sometimes your daughters would ask for toys from me. I was doing work and meeting their demands. I was getting a little tired, but I was also happy with them. The year was 2008. I was studying in the history department at Gazi University. I was the only child of my family. My classes were not too bad. I taught my lessons somehow and made it to the senior year. I had a very nice group of friends. I was having a great time with them. When it comes to dating girls, I had a few big and small relationships, but then I couldn't find anything else I wanted. I met a girl named Fiden from the 3rd grade. She was studying in the history department like me. We met a few times. We fell in love with each other. This must be what they call black love. Even when I was breathing, I felt a different excitement when I was around her. Sometimes I even forgot what to talk about. Our relationship was going very well. Fiden, she said she couldn't live without me anymore. She was saying I shared the same feelings. I finished school and came back to Izmir. Fiden had 1 more year. I would take the bus from Izmir every Friday and meet her on the weekends. I was also studying for the exams. I didn't have much hope, but I didn't stop working just in case I didn't get the job. Fidanda took a moment. I couldn't get it out of my mind. I couldn't get motivated to study, and ultimately I failed. By the way, Fiden had also finished school. Later on, I made a marriage proposal to Fiden. She accepted without hesitation. First, she introduced me to her brother, and then to her brother. After a short time, I made them love me and realized that I was a right person. They thought I was good, but there was a big problem. I couldn't find the job I wanted, and this caused me great trouble. Fiden was always supporting me and saying that I could succeed. I put the job search on hold for a while and told my mother and father. I said, let's go and ask for Fiden. They agreed. They were very happy. We asked Fiden from her father. He said it would happen if it was possible. The next day, he called me to a cafe and said, "Come, son, there is something very important that I need to talk to you about." The next day, we talked to her father, and he told me the facts of life. My daughter loves you. I want her to be happy, but I want her to be happy properly. You don't have a job and your father's situation is obvious. You can't make my daughter happy. A few years later, with tears in his eyes, he said, I don't want her to come back to my house. When I thought about what he said, he was right. I couldn't find a decent job. The jobs I found were always backbreaking and heavy, and that made me very hard, and the salaries were very low, and always my days were passing by with disappointment. My father had worked for years and could barely afford a house. I couldn't get any help from him. From that day on, I started to spend most of my time at home thinking about what I could do. I continued to think for days and even weeks, but the result was a big zero. Fiden was calling me every day and asking when will we get married. I was no longer waiting. He was saying he was bored. I told him that I wanted some more time. We started arguing all the time, and somehow our love started to fade away. I was passing days without leaving the house. I was constantly thinking about it. This made my parents very sad. My mother called my best friends Mehmet and Remzi and asked them to take me out. I was very happy when I saw them. For the first time in days, I had a smile on my face. One of them was a tax auditor in the finance department, and the other was a police officer. I was very happy for them. They told me to get ready immediately and that we would go on holiday tomorrow. Even though I said I was not in the mood right now, they somehow convinced me. We went on holiday. We came to Marmaris, all together. We were having a good time. It was a little good for me. Meanwhile, we were talking on the phone again with Fiden and arguing all the time. We were going to the sea during the day and having fun in the evening. I was happy as if I had left all my troubles behind. On the second day of our holiday, we took a boat tour. We got up in the morning and went to the boat. When I said Cleopatra Island Turtle Beach, there were many different shapes among the mountains. It looked magnificent and scary. These were the graves of people who lived here at the time. Conus graves were taken by the ship. It was close to a place like an island. He dropped anchor and said that we would stay here for a while and swim. Ramsey and Mehmet stayed on the boat. I was going to swim for a while and go to the island ahead. I was going to stay there for a while and come back. It was a bit far, but I thought I could swim. I guessed it. When I landed, I looked at the boat. Everyone was swimming near the boat. No one had the courage to come with me. Then, while looking around, I heard a voice behind me. I walked towards that direction and saw a pure white cat behind me. It was so beautiful that I immediately started to love it. Then I took it in my arms and continued to love it. On the other hand, I was astonished. What was this cat doing on such a tiny land? It jumped off my lap and landed on the ground. It was rubbing against my legs. It seemed like it didn't want to leave me. Then it got on a rock and started meowing towards me. I thought it was hungry, but how was I going to swim to the boat and get back here? I swam towards the boat and got a piece of chicken. During lunch break, I wrapped the chicken that I didn't eat in a bag and swam there again. I was very tired. Mehmet and Ramsey were sleeping. I didn't disturb it either. When I went ashore, the cat was standing on the rock again. I gave it the chicken I brought to it, and it started to eat. It looked very happy. Then I noticed some shapes on the rock. Arabic numbers. I learned it at the time 167 it was written, and there were some symbols that caught my attention, and I started to examine these symbols. They looked like hieroglyphic shapes in ancient Egypt. There were some animal figures. There were 2 vertical and 1 horizontal things under the rock. I couldn't quite figure out what it was. Meanwhile, an announcement came from the boat that the boat was going to leave. I had to go straight. I petted the cat's head one last time and came to the boat. Mehmet and Ramsey were still sleeping. On the way back, we passed by those Conus graves again, and the guide of the boat said that there were 167 graves here, and suddenly I felt an unnecessary excitement. Could that be a treasure map? I asked the captain of the ship. Tomorrow. I asked him if he had a tour again. He said yes. We returned to our hotel at the same time. I asked Mehmet and Ramsey if we could go on a boat tour again. They said of course. I had almost no money. They were covering all the expenses. They were my true friends. They did everything they could to make me happy. They were doing what I wanted. I couldn't sleep all night because of excitement. I always heard that this came out of this grave. These came out of other graves. And I was a graduate of the history department. I knew that old people were always buried with their belongings. This was going to be wonderful for me. I decided not to tell anyone anything. After all, my adventure could have ended in disappointment. I waited for the morning without even blinking my eyes. The next day, we came on the boat tour again. I was continuing my holiday with them without revealing anything to Ramsey and Mehmet, but on the other hand, I had an incredible excitement inside me. The boat came to the same place again, and I wrapped a piece of meat from lunch in nylon. I went towards that land again, and that pure white cat met me there again. I started to pet and caress her. I gave her the food I brought with me. She must have been happy too, because she started rubbing against my legs. Then I went to where that rock was again and examined the rock thoroughly from top to bottom. I examined the 2 vertical and 1 horizontal things there. What was it? There was a sign on one of them. Was it a cross or a cross? I couldn't figure out what it was. I brought my camera with me. I took it out of the nylon and took pictures of it again. I wrapped the camera in the nylon tightly so that no water could pass through. I said goodbye to that white cat and came back to the boat. Ramsey and Mehmet were sleeping again. I turned on the camera. I looked and the water had not entered and the pictures were still there. We were going to buy a ticket to Izmir in the evening and go home. When I looked at the camera for the last time, there were no pictures. I asked Mehmet and Ramsey if they had deleted the photos from the camera. I was very surprised when I got the answer no. Where were the photos? I looked at them in a very confused way and asked me, is there a problem? That's why I said I was a little tired. They said, don't worry, you can sleep on the bus and come to your senses. I still can't believe how something like this could happen. When I got on the boat, there were photos. I fell into a deep sleep on the bus. I had a dream. A man in a black cloak was making the dogs next to him attack me by giving commands. Then Mehmet, I woke up with his touch on me. He said, come on, let's go home. I didn't care much about this dream. When I came to Izmir, I had nothing else in my mind. If there was really treasure there, I locked myself in the house again and got lost in thoughts. This time I was dreaming of beautiful things. Money, cars, beautiful girls, a happy life inside me. There was excitement. Fighting had flown out of my mind. We were already fighting all the time. I thought it would be okay. The love between us was gone in an instant. I had to go there again, but I had no money. I couldn't ask my father. He asked, are you? I accepted without even asking what the job was. This was the opportunity I was looking for. I started working immediately. After working for about 20 days, I received my money. I had to start preparations and hit the road. The upper part of the tombs was a museum, but there was no shelter on the side where the tombs were. It seemed like no one was interested in it. I could go there by sea. It was impossible to enter from the square. Ramsey, since he was interested in underwater, I asked for his diving clothes, and after giving a little training, he gave me the materials. I bought a foldable pickaxe and a shovel. It's not very useful, but it would do the job. I could only go there with a backpack. I came to Dalian village of Marmaris, found a suitable hotel, settled in, joined a boat tour. I organized how to get there. I was going to get there by swimming. There was no other way. I had to be careful with my spending. Since I had little money, I will never forget it was September 26, 2009. It was getting dark a little late. Between 6 and half 7 in the morning, it was getting light. I had to leave before it got light. If something went wrong, I would continue the next day. I had made my plan. In the evening, when it was getting dark, I dived into the water. I had supplied everything: flashlight, batteries, diving suit. I wrapped my bag tightly to prevent it from being waterproof. And lastly, I came to the place where the graves were, looking at the fish under the water. Something to eat, and went ashore. It was getting very dark. That's what I wanted. After taking a breather, I went to the graves. I started to go towards the direction where the graves were built right in the middle of the mountain. The top part was a cliff. I was amazed at how people did this at the time. The graves were very steep and at the top. Then I saw small pieces of rock towards the left. I thought I could climb up from here. I reached one of the graves with a few minor wounds, sleeping inside the graves. There were other tombs from the inside. The backside was a cliff. It looked really amazing. I had to find that tomb as soon as possible, but all the tombs I came across were the same way. I had to find those symbols. The inside was like a maze. I was going from one tomb to another. There couldn't be 167 tombs here. It was empty there, but in my sleep, the graves were constantly changing, and I was turning around inside like a huge highway. It had an area of 20 or 30 meters from the outside, but inside there seemed to be very long tunnels. The back side of the graves was a cliff. When I looked down from the cliff, I thought there were other graves. I crawled through one of the holes and started from where I started. I felt like I was back on the ground. Could it be that my brain was playing tricks on me? I went through those loads again and started looking at the other graves. I was going to the left, but I was back where I started. I asked, "What is this?" It was just like in the movies. You keep moving forward, but you always come to the same place. This is completely extraordinary. It was a situation. I sat down and lit a cigarette. I was in a cave-like place. When I examined the content, when I looked carefully, I saw signs similar to the symbols on the rock. I looked at it carefully with my flashlight. Yes, they were the same signs. There were 2 vertical and 1 horizontal graves in front of me. I lit another cigarette. I was very excited. I immediately went into the graves and started touching them. I noticed that it had completely receded. It was pitch dark. I didn't have any health problems. I shivered a little. I noticed that there were 3 graves. My eyes were always on the graves on both sides, below left. I dug non-stop for about an hour. I was guessing that nothing would happen in this grave. I kept looking at that 3rd grave. Involuntarily, I was about to pass towards the 2nd grave when I heard a voice from outside. That white cat was there again, from that small island. How did it get here? When cats are hungry, can they swim? Or can cats swim? I thought for a moment if he had swum. If he had swum, it wasn't that difficult for him to come here. I took him inside with me, and I was watching him in amazement. In fact, I was happy to see him. I was alone here, and he was going to be my companion. After smoking another cigarette, I continued digging. The depth was over 1/2 meter. There was nothing again. I put a shovel into the ground. While I was throwing it, a scorpion came out from under the ground and immediately jumped on the cat. Since I had gloves on my hand, I took the scorpion and left it outside. I thought that every living thing in the world has the right to live, no matter what, and I did not harm it. When I looked at the clock, it was 3 to 5 o'clock. Then I took out the food I had brought with me from my bag and sat with the cat. We started eating together. I was quite tired. This white cat was very mysterious. It started to appear in front of me all the time. I rested a little more and hit the pickaxe 5-10 more times, and I realized that there was nothing in this grave. From the very beginning, my eyes were always on 3 graves. When I looked at my watch again, it was 3 o'clock. How can this happen? I said, I ate and rested for about half an hour and 45 minutes, smoked a cigarette, but was it only 5 minutes? I immediately looked at the phone in my bag. It was showing 3 o'clock. Very strange things were happening, and I couldn't understand it. I looked around. I couldn't see the cat. It was full, and I thought it was normal for it to leave. I came to the 3rd grave. What I experienced was a bit strange, but the desire to find the treasure was superior to everything. As soon as I hit the grave with the pickaxe, the moonlight suddenly receded, and there was an incredible hum. There was smoke inside. It was almost impossible to see. When I pointed my flashlight outside, I saw that there was a very bad fog. Since we were further away, it was quite normal for there to be fog around. I thought about it and realized that the walls were slowly coming towards me. The walls were starting to come towards me like the material being compressed in a press machine. I had to get out of there immediately. I thought we should go to the other grave from the hole at the back, but that hole was very narrow. I tried to go slowly. The hole was getting narrower. I got stuck there, and when I came to, I lost consciousness. The hole had widened a lot, even in a different position. I opened my eyes. I immediately went to my bag and started drinking my water. I was in a very hectic mood. I still felt lucky that it wasn't morning. I had to get away from here and go to the hotel. Then I looked at my watch, and it was 22 o'clock. I said, "Oh my God, how could it have been morning? This will happen," I said to myself. I immediately looked at my phone from my bag and saw it was 22 September 27th. I called Ramsey. "Ramsey," I asked, "how you are?" "I'm fine, brother." "How is your holiday going? Is it fun underwater?" He said yes. I asked him, "Have you been watching for an hour?" "It's been an hour." "I haven't watched the summary," he said. "I ate dinner then." I hung up the phone. I believed it was 22 o'clock. I believed the TV series usually start at 20 o'clock, and they would give a summary of about an hour. He had not watched the summary, and he had been watching the series for an hour. I took a deep breath and tried to light a cigarette one after the other. I started to think that things were happening that should never have happened. I was a little worried, and on the other hand, I was looking at the third grave and was lost in thought. I was stuck in that hole unconsciously for about 15 hours. It was just like patience being in a vegetative state. While I was lying there, I wondered if there were any other strange things going on, and I started laughing again. 3, I went to the grave and started to forget about digging. A very sharp wind started, and the moonlight disappeared again. The inside was plunged into darkness again. I bought about 10-15 batteries. A flashlight was very important. There had to be light. When I broke the concrete mold and reached the ground, I suddenly started hearing footsteps and whispered conversations. I turned off my flashlight and cleaned up the surroundings. I hid in that oil behind me. I thought someone had reported me. I hid in that sleep for a long time. The sounds had stopped. It was starting to get light inside again. I was very tired. I took a shower and immediately fell asleep. I was so tired that I didn't even think about the strange things I experienced. While I was asleep, I was crossing a long bridge, and on the other side of the bridge, a man with a black cloak in his hand was waiting for me in a rock. I woke up immediately to the effects. I didn't take this dream seriously. When I woke up, it was 17 o'clock. I walked around the market for a while and spent the night. I did a little shopping, and after finishing my preparations, such as food and water, I went into the water again. When I came to the graves, it was completely dark, and I went up again. When I came to the grave, it was like I had left everything. I said I was dreaming. There was nothing strange. It was just a very strange feeling inside me. I was happy here. I was dreaming that I would somehow get out. I started hitting the pickaxe again. I dug up to about half a meter. I was using an incredible power again. Voices started to come from outside the graves again. I couldn't quite understand what they were saying. The surroundings were plunged into darkness again. Shadows began to appear outside again. I would later learn that they were jinns who claimed the treasure. If they were there, they were jinns. Frankly, I didn't know what my reaction would be if I realized what was happening. I immediately turned off my flashlight, tidied up the mess, and went to the rhyme in the background. Someone must have reported me. I understood that there were gendarmes outside. I could hear their conversations, and their shadows were clearly visible. This is a historical place. It was not legal for me to do such a thing here, and I didn't want to go to jail. I put my hands up. I opened it and started begging God. I said, "God, help me. I don't want to go to jail." I started praying all the prayers I know. I prayed for minutes, and the moonlight started to shine inside again. The sound stopped, and I felt a great peace inside. I stuck my head out and looked around for a long time. There was nothing wrong when I looked at the clock. It was 6 o'clock. The weather could be bright at any moment. I thought that would be enough for the day, so I entered the water again to go to the hotel. I took a hot shower and started to sleep immediately. I was very tired. I had the same dream again. I had never seen the man at the other end of the bridge with his black men in his hand. I didn't care. I'm not a scared person. I'm trying to remember the last time I was scared, but it must have been a long time. My father was a very tough man. He used to say, "Don't be afraid of anyone. Let this world be afraid of you." So I turned on everything and everyone. Although I was a little uneasy in the grave, I didn't feel completely afraid. It was 17 again. I was almost running out of money. I charged my phone, bought a few batteries for my flashlight, and bought something to eat. I went into the water again around 8 o'clock. When it got completely dark, I went to where their graves were and was looking around, hoping to see that white cat, but it wasn't there either. I went into the grave and I continued to dig. It was about 2 meters. Those strange things were not happening anymore, and I really started to believe that they were dreams. I continued to dig for a long time. A terrible fog covered the outside, and it started to get dark again. I looked at my watch. It was past midnight. I thought they were going to activate it again. I packed up and turned off the flashlight and hid in the alcove at the back. They were whispering again. I couldn't fully understand what they were saying. You know, 2 people talking 10 meters away and you hear some humming sounds? Just like that, this time they were very close. I could see the shadows of the soldiers inside. So, I was a soldier until that moment. I thought they were jinn. God, help me. I don't want to go to prison, I said again and closed my eyes and started to read all the prayers I know. I could feel the voices slowly disappearing again. I still couldn't open my eyes. The voices had stopped completely. When I opened my eyes, it was bright inside again. A deep sigh. I took a breath and lit a cigarette. This time I was very scared. In fact, I also felt that I was scared to my bones. If they saw me there, I would probably try to escape. I wondered if the soldiers would shoot at me. I could lose my life. This job was getting very dangerous. The gendarmerie would come into play here every night. I learned this and started digging by smoking a few cigarettes in a row and praying to God again. I started working like crazy, and I was working fast. Suddenly, I heard a clicking noise. He mentioned something like cardboard that was not soil. I immediately dug into the soil with my hands and reached a black leather bag. It was probably gazelle skin. When I shook the bag, I heard coin-like sounds. When I opened it and looked inside, I saw gold and a great scream. I threw it. I was about to jump in the air with joy, but I quickly collected myself and silenced myself. The soldiers might have been nearby. It was starting to get dark inside again. A terrible fog covered the outside. I didn't care at all. I opened my hands and prayed again. At that moment, the fog disappeared. The inside was bright and shining, as if the yellow lamp was lighting the blower we had at home. I went into the water, checked the surroundings near the shore, and came to that word. I left the hotel and set off towards Izmir. I thought about where to hide the gold. I couldn't hide it at home. My mother would definitely find it. My mother was a slightly different woman. She would clean every day without getting tired. She would pour cologne on us before entering the house, then immediately put our hands on it. He would have our clothes washed immediately. We could not wear a pair of trousers, a sweater, or socks for 2 days. I never saw him shake hands with anyone or hug anyone. He would only hug me and caress my head. He would wear gloves on his hands when leaving the house. He would always wear a mask when he entered crowded places. He would never go out as a guest or if guests come to our house easily. I was very upset about her situation, but my father and I had gotten used to this situation. I thought I should bury the gold somewhere in the garden of our apartment, and so I did, because when my mother hid things at home, she would find them instantly. She would take down the trousers and sweaters in their closets and even wipe those shelves. She did this every day. I came home almost tirelessly and came home. I was very happy. What could I do now? I had to turn them into money. Yes, I had gold in my hand, but it wasn't making me rich for now. The next day, I started wandering around the jeweler's bazaar in Cameralty. These things wouldn't happen. It was too dangerous. I went to our neighborhood's internet cafe. From there, I started to browse the websites of some big companies and antique dealers, but it wouldn't happen like this. An acquaintance would definitely do it. I decided not to say anything to anyone, including my father, for now. Meanwhile, Fiden was neither looking for me, nor I was looking for her. Our love had completely faded away. I had to tell her that I should break up with her as soon as possible. She acted before me and said that she did not love me anymore and that our paths parted here. It was very good news. Everything started to go as I wanted. I locked myself at home and started thinking about what I could do. I was casting fishing rods at home for hours. Then I remembered a friend of mine named Haken in my old neighborhood. He had been working as a jeweler for years. He was also a familiar Burke. We spent our childhood together. I thought I should find him. I came to my old neighborhood. When I arrived, Haken had moved from there and started to live in a better house in a much better place. Apparently, life had smiled on him and he was living happily. From there, I reached his phone number and called him, and he recognized me immediately. We briefly talked about old times and laughed. I told him that I had to talk to him about something very important, but it took a long time. There might be a meeting, I said. Don't put it in between. He said, "It's okay, son. Did you find a burial or something?" He said to me with a sarcastic attitude. We agreed to meet at a cafe in the mansion tomorrow. We were going to meet at around 18 o'clock. We would have plenty of time after the end of work. I came home, dug the garden, and took a gold piece from the bag, and I hid it somewhere among the flowers at the front of the apartment. Tomorrow I was going to take it with me. The excitement was all over me. I couldn't sleep. We met with Haken in that cafe. We hugged each other and started talking about old times. We were very cheerful. We were laughing and having a good time. Then suddenly I stopped. Haken told me what's the real deal. He said from my pocket. I took out the gold and gave it to him. I told him everything that was going on. He said wait for news from me, and I gave it to him. Everything was going normal until that day. I came home again. I got lost in my thoughts and smoked cigarettes one after another. I couldn't contain myself. I started dreaming of money. I couldn't sleep because of excitement. I started to see that dream again, which I had in the hotel room. I woke up, washed my face, and fell asleep again. Same dream, I was walking on the bridge, but I ate as if I wasn't moving even a single step. That creature with its hand in its hand was waiting for me on the other side of the bridge. I woke up again without moving. I lit a cigarette and went out to the balcony. It wasn't even morning yet. A darkness under the street lamp caught my attention. Suddenly, it went dark and went to that side of the garbage container. I was staring at it with great attention. Then it went dark. It went inside the garbage container. The lid of the container closed to bury it. A pitch-black smoke mixed into the air and flew upwards. I asked myself, what is this? It was October. I thought it would be better to sleep with 2 blankets. The weather was getting colder. I went back to bed. I fell asleep with difficulty. I found myself in the same dream again. I was walking on the bridge, but I ate as if I was standing still. I couldn't move forward even a single step. This time, the creature threw the sickle in his hand towards me. I immediately ate my head, and it passed over my head. When I looked back, this sickle was like curiosity, pointing towards me. It started to come back. I bent down again, and the sickle came back to the creature's hand. It started to hit the bridge with the sickle. The bridge was swinging. The bottom was an endless abyss. I held on tightly to the arms of the bridge. I was screaming, "Don't do it." It was swinging from side to side, just like a cradle. It was almost breaking. Then suddenly it started hitting the bridge. He let go and tried to come towards me, but something seemed to be blocking him. His feet were huge. He raised his hand towards me. He said something. I didn't understand anything. I woke up with a start. I looked at the time. It was almost noon. There was a very strong smell inside. My mother was cleaning again. It looked like she was doing something bad with bleach. She wiped everything inside. It smelled like bleach. I went to the bathroom again and took a shower. When I looked at myself in the mirror, my eyes were red. I was going to change my clothes and go out, but when I put on my shoes, I realized that half of my foot was free. I used to wear size 41 shoes, but when I put on my shoes, I realized that half of my foot was free. I used to wear size 41 shoes, but my shoes, it seemed like it was a size 60. Then I tried to put on my other shoe. It was the same again. I called out to my mother without making a fuss. I said, "Mom, is there something in my shoe?" "It won't fit," she said. "Son, you're wearing it." At that moment, I realized something was wrong. I said, "Give me the slippers." "Are you going to wear them, son?" "It's cold. Don't catch a cold." He said, "It's cold. Don't catch a cold." I said no. I put on my slippers and went out. The weather was around 10 degrees, so it was not the weather to wear slippers. I went to our neighborhood coffee house. Urza, the coffee shop guy, brought me tea. I was sitting 2 tables away. Other young people from the neighborhood were playing games. I noticed one of them was talking about me. "Look at him. He's been looking at the tea for about 10 minutes. This is my son. Are all the readers crazy?" He started laughing by saying, "He's wearing slippers in this weather." I immediately got up from the table, walked towards him, and started hitting him. I was punching him so hard that I continued hitting him without paying attention to the fact that the child's face was covered in blood. Nobody could hold me back. Coffee shop Urza brother and the boy's friends were holding me back. Zorbella was able to stop me. Then I went home and started casting those fishing rods in my room again. I was thinking, but I didn't know what I was thinking. Then my phone rang. It was Haken. He said he had found a buyer and said a very scary price for a piece of gold. I said, "Okay, arrange the meeting, I'll come." Then I noticed a few stones were thrown at my window. I got into a fight in the coffee shop. The boy's relatives or friends were waiting for me downstairs. They said, "We are waiting for you. Come and talk." I took out my brass knuckles from my closet and put them on my fingers. There were 7 people in total outside. I went downstairs, and without asking any questions, I punched the person closest to me, and he fell down directly to the ground. I could see blood flowing from his mouth. I hit the second child so hard that I felt his teeth break. He also fell to the ground. Just as I was about to move towards the third person, someone kicked me from behind, and I lost my balance and fell to the ground. At that moment, they all started hitting me at once. It was hurting me so much. I opened it and found myself in the hospital room. I had bruises and rashes on many parts of my body. It was hurting so much. I saw my father in front of me. My mother was not there. She did not come. She used to say that hospitals were hotbeds of germs. I always thought that she did not come because she was afraid of catching germs. My father asked me what was going on. I said, "There is nothing, Father." We argued, and I said, "We had a fight. That's it." My father didn't bother me much either. I was going to spend the night in the hospital. Then I fell asleep, and suddenly I woke up. I looked at the clock. It was almost 4 in the morning. I started to hear the sound of a shoe at the beginning of the corridor. I guessed it was someone wearing shoes. I was slowly hearing the knocking sounds. He was coming towards the door of the room. I locked myself in the direction of the door and came across the new creature again. He had Urek in his hand again. He seemed to have no face, no mouth, no nose, nothing. I looked at him with eyes full of anger. I couldn't get out of bed. Every part of me was aching. I wanted to get up and attack him. He pointed at me with his hand. I didn't understand again. He tried to say something to me using language. He tried to come inside, but it didn't work. He walked away shaking his head at me as if we'll see each other again. I left the hospital and came home. My mother immediately took me to the bathroom. I took a shower, and then she took me inside. I was resting at home. I took stock of everything that happened to me, but I couldn't find a logical explanation. I was safe inside the house. I decided to go out and get some. My shoes were too loose again. I put on my slippers again. It was slowly getting dark. I went towards the coffee shop. The relatives of the boy I had a fight with were there. The coffee shop owner said, "Brother Urza, my son should not cause any trouble." I said, "No, Brother Urza," and I sat at a table and started to glare at them again. We started, "Urza, come on. Son, go away." I said, "Okay." I was filled with anger again. I started to walk towards their table. There were 4 of them. I hit the table with my hands and said, "I'll cut you all up here." All 4 of them were looking at me coldly. They walked away from the coffee shop without saying anything. After drinking a few cups of tea and calming down, I started walking outside. The person's voice caught my attention. The hoodlums from the upper neighborhood, the dealer Mustafa and the thief Yaln, were coming towards me. I immediately took out the brass knuckles from my pocket and put them on my fingers. "Mustafa, what's up, son? You have started to attack everyone. Come on, we can have some fun too," he said, looking under the bottom. This time, I had a very bad anger inside me. My hands and feet started to shake. This was definitely not me. The thief fell down after I hit Yaln. It was right on his nose and moo. I realized that the bone in his nose was broken. His teeth suddenly turned black. He had no eyes either. I was hitting Mustafa with all my strength, but he was laughing, which made me angry too. There was a stone the size of my head next to me. I picked it up and was about to hit Mustafa's head when I realized that someone was holding my hand. Coffee shopper's a brother and the other customers in the coffee shop. He came there. Then they took me away from there. When I looked at Mustafa, he was covered in blood. Everything was back to normal. I could see blood flowing down my neck. The police and the ambulance came and took us all to the hospital. I had 12 stitches on my neck. When I came to, my father was there and said, "Are you okay, son?" "I'm fine, Dad," I said. Then Mustafa and Yon's father came and said, "Let's not complain about each other. Let's just say it was a simple fight." The police wanted me to give a statement that way. They were both well prepared. They said that was all. We gave our statements, but a separate file was opened for Mustafa, and Kavechier's brother was also there for stabbing me. He destroyed the brass knuckles that fell at the scene to prevent the stitches from bursting. I didn't leave the house for a few days. The gold had flown out of my mind. Haken still hadn't called. I called Haken and his father answered the phone. He said that Haken was dead. He had been stung by a scorpion in the basement of his house and died right there. I had to rest at home for a few more days. I still had those dreams, but now I didn't care. Remzi and Mehmet came to visit me. They were very surprised to see me like that. My face was always covered in wounds and bruises. I said I was fine. We were longing for a little while without my mother seeing. They brought me kebabs and kunaf, and we ate them secretly from my mother. My mother never brought food from outside into the house, along with them in the garbage. I sent it. It was midnight again. I went out to the balcony and smoked. I saw the creature again under the street lamp with a sickle in its hand, looking at me. Another one appeared right behind it. Then I saw another one. They ate 5 in total, and they were looking at me with full attention. At that moment, Riyad brother's son, who lived at the end of our neighborhood, was looking at me. Selim was coming from work shift. He didn't notice me and passed by them. He didn't see them. I went inside immediately and tried to read a book. After 5-10 minutes, I went out to the balcony again. They were there again. They were looking at me. I went back in and tried to read the book. I saw that the vowels in the book were missing. I looked at the other pages and they all had vowels. There were no letters. Then I started to think that I was a sovereign. Now, let me sleep. I said I'll worry about it tomorrow. My wounds were slowly healing. I was going to take a look at the gold in the garden before going to the hospital. I had experienced so much action that the gold had flown out of my mind. However, what dreams did I have about them? Haken was also dead. How was I going to turn the gold into money? He was standing there. I went to the hospital and had my stitches removed. I decided to stop by the cafe, but everyone who saw me was changing their path. People were starting to be afraid of me. I saw Selim on the road. We exchanged greetings. I guess he was going to work and asked if I was okay. I think I asked him if anything was different when I was coming home last night. No, everything was normal. It was just the trash. He said, "I smelled a very strong smell while passing by." I said, "That's it. You didn't see anything that caught your attention?" He said, "Yes. I was the only one who could see these." I guess I gave up going to the coffee shop and walked home. I looked at the book at home. There were no vowels. I asked my father again. My eyes hurt so much. Can you read 46 pages of this book to me? I said, ugh, he said, but he didn't offend me. He read the book comfortably. I opened the pages of the book and looked. There were no vowels. I postponed the exchange of gold coins for a while. I left the house towards the evening and went to the coffee shop. Urza brother. I dropped something that belonged to me on the day of the incident. Did I see it? Yes, I have it, but I won't give it to you, my son. He said, "Don't worry about that, Mustafa. You'll get a job." I said nothing will happen and I took the brass knuckles from him. Mustafa was really dangerous. He was in and out of jail all the time. Everyone in the neighborhood would say, "Mustafa did that, Mustafa did that," and they would talk. I left the coffee shop while I was going to go home. I saw the thieves Jan and Mustafa from the opposite side. They were coming towards me. I saw Jan a few times after the incident. When he saw me, he bowed his head and walked away. Mustafa was staring at me, and he was getting on top of me. Jan also slowly got behind Mustafa. He looked a little uneasy. Something was going to happen again. I didn't like his looks at all. In Mu, I put it on my fingers again. As Mustafa approached me, his face turned left and right. He was crooked. Only the whites of his eyes were visible. His pupils were almost gone. His teeth were black. I suddenly noticed that my hands were shaking again. Anger took over me. It was as if he had passed my body with someone else. We came face to face with Mustafa. He spat in my face. I closed my eyes and opened them again. Mustafa had returned to normal. Suddenly we started attacking each other too. While I was fighting with Mustafa, Jan was hitting me. Then my father and the people in the cafe came and separated us. My father brought me home, gave me a world of advice, and my mother was crying. I said, "Okay, nothing is wrong," and then I calmed down a little. I tried to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night and drank water and went to bed. As I was returning, I saw the light of the apartment building turning on through the hole in the door. When I looked through the hole in the door, I saw someone in a black hoodie coming down from in front of our door. After saying 1, 2, 3, 4, he stopped in front of our door and looked at me. This was the creature from my dream. He had a sickle in his hand. How did he realize that I was behind the door? Then he said, "Haken." He walked away from there. My knees were weak. I collapsed where I was. How did this creature know Haken? Or did they kill Haken? I was constantly looking behind me. The next day, I set my phone for midnight. This time, I had to finish this job. I took knuckle dusters and a bread knife with me and started to sleep. My phone rang. I walked towards the door hole. The light was flashing. I took the knife in my hand and started waiting for the creature behind the door, whose hand was placed on the wall. They were slowly going down. Finally, he came to, looking towards the hole in the door, and said, "Haken." I immediately opened the door and looked, but he was going down very fast. His feet were very big. I started running with the knife in my hand through the door of the apartment. I went out, but he wasn't there. I collapsed in front of the door of the apartment and started to cry. My psychology started to deteriorate. What were these? What did they want from me? He bent his connections with Haken. The next day, I didn't go out of the house. I thought about it all day in my room. I heard some noises outside. 5 black cats had mauled 1 cat. I immediately went downstairs and killed those black cats. I kicked out the white cat. It was very seriously injured. It was the white cat in the cemetery. I was sure of it. I took the cat to the vet and had its wounds treated. I took the cat from the vet and built a nest inside the apartment. The neighbors purred a little, but they were afraid of me, so they couldn't make much noise. After that day, dreams stopped like a knife at midnight. I looked through the hole. No one was coming. It was as if a magic wand had fixed everything. I didn't want to exchange the gold coins without fixing myself. I met with Mehmet and Remzi and started to make up for my longing with them. I asked them for some money and went straight to the hospital. The doctor said there was nothing wrong with your head. You are very healthy. There was nothing scientifically involved in psychiatry. I went to his doctor and I explained most of the things in a veiled manner. He dismissed it by saying that sometimes people have dreams and gave me medication. That was not a solution either. I was heading home. We met Mustafa on the road. He invited me to drink tea. We sat and chatted for a while, making jokes and laughing as if nothing had happened, and he said it was strange. I asked if something was wrong. He said no, I thought I was going back to my old life without anything happening for a few days. When I went to buy bread in the morning, I couldn't see the white cat. That day, everything started to turn upside down again. I couldn't find it no matter how hard I searched. After breakfast, I went to my room and lay down for a while. In my dream, the creature was in front of me again, this time on the bridge. He came towards the middle and cut off my head with the sickle in his hand. At that moment, I jumped out of bed and shouted like a little child, saying, "Mom." My mother, who heard my voice, came to me immediately and said, "What happened, son?" I couldn't breathe. It was almost like I was locked up. I couldn't speak. My mother brought me a glass of water. When I drank it, I came to my senses a little bit. It was a very bad nightmare. I told my mother that I saw her. She stood over me for a while and prayed, and at that moment, I felt very relieved. After sleeping for a while, I turned on the TV and looked at the channels. It was mentioned that demons were haunting a woman. It caught my attention. I turned up the volume loudly and started listening to GL attentively. She was going through events similar to what I had experienced. I thought, these are definitely demons, just outside our neighborhood. There was an internet cafe on top of it. Smartphones were not very common at that time. We used to do all our work in internet cafes. I started walking towards the internet cafe without looking at anyone's face. As I was walking on the road, I heard voices saying, "Haken, Haken." I turned on the monitor and started examining it. I had printed out all the prayers to bury the demons. In the evening, I couldn't sleep. Towards midnight again, I noticed that the lights of the apartment were on through the door hole, but this time I couldn't go to look. I was constantly reciting prayers, and this time fear had penetrated to my bones. When I gathered up my courage and looked through the door hole, the genie with the sickle in his hand was pointing at me and saying something in a language I did not know. Then I accelerated the prayer reading, and when I read it louder, I ran away. He left. I remembered our mosque teacher in our old neighborhood. I was going to go and tell him everything. I couldn't sleep at all. In the morning, I took the minibus and came to our old neighborhood. As I passed Haken's house, his family and relatives were laughing rather than laughing. I said that the demons must have touched something here, and I walked away immediately. Poor Haken, because of me. I found the teacher who had lost his life. He recognized me, and I told him what happened. The teacher said, "You should be grateful for being alive until now." He directed me to someone named Bedri Hadia in Gilatpi, and he said he will cure your problem. I went to Gilatpi immediately and came to a shabby, ruined house. The address showed this place and the door. I rang and the Hadia took me in. I told Bitin, who asked me to wait a little while, and said that he would go inside and talk to his demons. He came and started talking. They couldn't completely haunt you. There was another genie that was always protecting you. Most of the time, he appeared to you as a white cat. That's why he could not harm you very much. He said they couldn't give it to me. I couldn't believe what I heard. That white cat turned out to be a genie. In fact, this tribe was very powerful. They asked for the sacrifice from you and took it. They sacrificed your friend. I said yes, Haken. Now they want the gold. He said you should go and bury the gold back where you got it. He asked me for some materials and some money. Come tomorrow. Let's get this done, he said. Well, will they leave me behind? I asked if I do what they want. He said yes. I took money from my mother, saying I needed money urgently. I brought it to the teacher when he asked. The teacher took everything he wanted. After doing something in the kitchen, he came with a bowl of water and papers in his hand. He burned the papers and threw them into the water, then told me. He gave me an amulet and said, "No matter what, don't take this amulet off." He wrote something on a piece of paper and gave it to me. As soon as you entered the grave, he constantly recited this prayer for you. Then they won't be able to interfere with you, and you can handle your business, he said. Then he asked for the money. I gave him the money. First, I took the gold from the garden, took the diving suits from Ramsey, and took them to the bus. As soon as I jumped, I came to Marmaris. I entered the water from the shore and reached the graves. When I came to the graves, I started to read the paper that the teacher gave me. I was reading all the time. It was like I had left everything. I looked at the bag containing the gold one last time. I buried it in the grave and walked away. Exactly 6 years had passed. My life was back to normal now, neither dream nor dream. I was seeing jinn in the city. I found a good job. Then I went to the military. I was doing my military service at the Iranian border of Eider. It was a very short time before I received my military service. One night, around 12 o'clock, we were patrolling on our side of the Erez River. Suddenly, I heard a voice. "Wait, who is it?" I shouted Duro and pulled the cocking handle of my gun and let go. I could have fired at any moment. Then I heard a meow. That white cat had come again. I took it up to the tower and started sobbing like that. Maybe it was the happiest moment of my life. I thanked God for showing him to me again.